And good afternoon. Start that again. And good afternoon to everyone near and far, or good evening, good morning, or whatever time of day it is if you're watching this on our YouTube channel. And if you are watching on the YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe. It makes a huge difference to us with the number of subscribers we get. And there are a lot of you now, which is very gratifying, who actually are watching us on YouTube and seeing all the other delights that we have to offer. And speaking of the other delights, there are one or two to report on. For instance, we had a clear outbreak of spring during the week here in Pittsburgh, and we're going back to winter again on Sunday, but that's nothing new. Why do I talk about the weather in Pittsburgh all the time? Because it's relentless. Weather followed by weather followed by weather. And hello, James. Yes, cold Crafton. I'm not at all surprised. It's getting very chilly here in Regent Square because we're quite high up. And where I live, my house, I get a strong breeze from the back. Hello, James in White Oak. Wonderful to see you back. And what else do I have to tell you? Oh, yes, the other major events. Here it is. The Allegheny Foundation, you may recall last year, sponsored us for the entire year of webinars, and bless them, they have done it again this year. So all the webinars this year sponsored by the Allegheny Foundation, which means when I ask you for a sponsorship, it'll be for something else. But the webinars are secure for another year. Thank you, Allegheny Foundation, from the bottom of our collective hearts and picked. Other thank yous, I want to say a particular thing. There's the thing about the YouTube channel. Do subscribe, please, because you get much more than the webinar. You get all sorts of news and all sorts of information and pictures of things that happen. It's great. It's wonderful. I want to particularly say a word of thank you to the attendees and the supporters and the sponsors of our 25th annual gala, which happened on Saturday. And it was a great evening. A lot of fun was had by all. It was delightful. The view was stupendous. The award winners, who were James Fitzgerald and Karen Baum, were utterly shocked and surprised because we did manage to keep it a secret right the way through. And they received award for basically being backbone to Picked Classic Theatre. We pride ourselves on being a company of artists rather than just a management that employs artists. We are deeply proud of the people who are loyal to us, and deeply proud of the fact we try to be as loyal as we can to them. So it was a celebration of what I am constantly describing as the family of Picked Classic Theatre. But for all of you who were there, and for all of you who couldn't attend, but nevertheless sent us some money, bought some tickets, sponsored items, sponsored things for the silent auction, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Wonderful. The other piece of news is that our next production is going into rehearsal in a very short time. That's Samuel Beckett's Endgame. Booking is now open. There you see. It's going to be from May 12th to 28th, so we start rehearsals for that in a couple of weeks now. And Endgame is my personal favorite of Beckett's plays. I know everybody always thinks of Waiting for Godot first, and that is a play that I love beyond measure. But Endgame, I think, is one of the most remarkable plays ever written. It is very funny, and it is totally absurd, but not like absurdist drama. It is just absurd in its proposition, and yet its proposition is absolutely true to life. And you're going to love it if you get in to see it. However, even though booking is now open and you can book online on the website, it is limited seating because of the way we're staging it. It is a limited run. So if you're going to come and see it, do book now. I want to make sure that everybody who wants to see it can see it, because I can't extend the run and I can't extend the amount of seats available. So please, please, please think of, if you want to see it, and you should, because it's got 4 of our wonderful picked artists in it. Book now. Get on as soon as wait until you've heard the webinar. Then get onto the website and book your tickets now. As I say, limited seating, limited run, wonderful production, wonderful cast, and I guarantee it's going to. If you don't get to see it, you'll regret it, not just now, but for the rest of your life. So I think that's all the announcements I have to make, and we've allowed latecomers probably enough time to park their cars and get their cups of coffee or whatever it is they take while watching this. I myself have my cup of coffee, and I have guests today, guests who are going to join me, who are going to be reading some of the extracts from this particular play. You'll meet them, you'll see them as they come along. So that'll be a nice surprise for you. So, Tartuffe, Part 2. And again, I repeat, my own personal subtitle for this mini-series on Tartuffe is Be Careful Who You Pray With. As I said last week, I believe Tartuffe to be not merely a brilliant, brilliant comedy, but also a brilliant, brilliant satire on the politics of life as well as the politics of nations. I think that Moliere brilliantly, brilliantly satirized the absurdities of human behavior, particularly when living in a society that was divided by wealth and position, and where religion took a dominant role. He was writing in the age of the Sun King, Louis XIV in France, the man who built Versailles. He was an absolute monarch. He was not a bad man in the sense that he did a lot of good. He tried to change, shifted away from the feudal system. He did some good things, but he was a despot. He was an absolute monarch. And he did preside over a country where the difference between poor and rich was so vast. We talk about the 1% now. That was absolutely true in the France of the Sun King. And also, the other point I tried to make is when I talk about who you pray with, who you worship, I'm not just talking religion in a conventional sense. What I'm saying is, and what I think Moliere is saying is, we set up our personal gods, our little petty gods who tend to ruin by ruling our lives, who want to control us and who want to gain from us. The hypocrisy of such people is mind-boggling. And if you want a parallel, look at the number of companies, and it's not just me, you see it in the newspapers all the time. Company chief executives taking multi-million-dollar pay rises while at the same time putting up the cost of things because of inflation and forcing people into poverty. I'm not being socialistic here. I'm talking reality. Or companies, there's one in the UK that has just sacked many of its workers in order to ostensibly save money. And the person who did the sacking has just had a pay rise because of his efficiency of millions. So we set up these petty gods and we worship them because they appear to speak truth. They appear to obey the rules and advocate rules of order and discipline and control. But when you put your faith in a self-professed saint, you're taking a huge risk, because you're making the assumption that self-proclaimed saint, by saint, I don't just talk in the religious sense, I talk in the economic sense, in the political sense, all of those senses, which I think Moliere was doing. When you put your faith in the self-professed saint, the faith that only he knows the truth, only he knows the way to eternal glory, only he can make America great again, you are treading a very dangerous path. And it is usually the older, because as you grow older, you tend to grow slightly more conservative. It's sad but true. Moliere uses the matriarch of the family to lead into the play on this very point. At the beginning of the play, Madame de Pernelle is the one who proclaims that the family must support this wonderful, virtuous, saintly figure of Tartuffe. Here's Lisa Ann to read that opening moment.
He is a holy man whom all should hear, and I cannot bear without great rue to hear him mocked by a fool like you, and everything he forbids is well forbidden. He strives to guide you on the road to heaven, and it's my son's duty to make you love him. Ah, mercy on me! Things would be better if you'd only follow his holy orders.
Now, the fool that Madame Pinel is referring to there is Damis, the son of Orgon, who is the head of the household. And interestingly, Orgon never listens to his son, never listens, never takes the warnings that the young give him. So you have this wonderful hierarchy set up of the matriarch of the family saying, I worship this man. You have Orgon saying, I agree with you, and we should all worship this man. And you have the younger generation saying, that is Damis and his sister Marianne, saying, no, he's a liar, he's a cheat, he's a fraud, he is a hypocrite. But of course, age is wise. The wisdom of age says, no, wrong, we are right, and you will obey. Now, Orgon is established as the clear and absolute head of the household. An important satiric point, because the head of the household, the paterfamilias, the father and the husband, is king in his own domain. He is the ultimate boss and one who must be obeyed because of his position, one whose opinion is law. And if that isn't a parallel to the Sun King, nothing is. And the Sun King was very much a subject to religion and the church. The church had huge power, huge domination within the society. So Moliere is right on the button when it comes to how he's going to satirize this. But take the kingdom, turn it into a family. Take organized religion or any other kind of despotic faith-based organization and have it influence that family and try to control that family, and you have a wonderful parallel for the state. Not just the state of Louis XIV, but any state. So, Moliere, through Orgon, really does give us a very clear picture of stupidity in the character of Orgon. And Orgon, in this sense, being stupid, is all of us. Because we, the viewer, the listener, the audience, we are the ones being parodied and satirized. The message is for us. So to that extent, the hero of the play is not Tartuffe, but Orgon. He is the one who sets out as the proponent of purity and justice and religious fervor, and he is the one who's got to learn his lesson. And that's, by the way, the character that Moliere played in the original production, not Tartuffe. So we get a conversation very early in the play, which sort of, in a way, demonstrates how Orgon behaves regarding Tartuffe and everybody else. And it's a conversation between Orgon and his maid, Dorine. So you see his comparative concern for his family and his new spiritual guide. At this moment, Orgon's been away from home, leaving Tartuffe in spiritual control of his household. And here Ken and Lisanne are going to read that conversation between Orgon and Dorine.
Dorine, for these past 2 days, how have things gone on? What has happened and how is everyone?
The first day, your wife had a bad fever and a headache that just wouldn't leave her.
And Tartuffe?
Tartuffe, he's in splendid shape, fat and flabby with red lips and a shining face.
Poor fellow.
That night, your wife felt so sick and so feverish that she could only pick at her dinner and scarcely ate a bite.
And Tartuffe?
He alone ate with all his might, and devoutly devoured a pair of pheasants and a leg of lamb in Our Lady's presence.
Poor fellow.
The whole night passed before she could even close her eyes to fall asleep. Shivers and chills beset her in bed, and right up till dawn we watched her with dread.
And Tartuffe?
Drowsy from all that he'd consumed, he left the table, went straight to his room, and fell quickly into his nice warm sack, where he slept all night, flat on his back.
Oh, poor fellow.
At last, your wife began heeding our good advice that she needed bleeding, and she began to recover soon thereafter.
And Tartuffe.
He couldn't have been any better. To fortify himself against every ill, and to regain the blood that Madam spilled, he drank at brunch 4 great glasses of wine.
Poor fellow.
Both of them are now quite fine. I'll now be going up to tell your wife of your deep concern at this threat to her life.
Clearly, I mean, the scene is a glorious parody in the sense that the church or the government or whatever is controlling is the first concern for the due adherent. The church, for instance, would demand tithes that should be paid prior to any other concern for your family. Moliere is very conscious of this. We look after the state. We look after those who control us before we look after our own. It's one of those facts of social history that has come down to us still. Clearly, once one's belief in a saint, and I use the term again guardedly, has been established, it supersedes all other concerns. Family and friends, everybody that should matter to us becomes secondary to one's very often misplaced belief. This is Moliere explains slightly further in an exchange between Orgon and his friend Cléante. Orgon describes very clearly how he feels about Tartuffe. Here's Ken.
Brother, you'd be charmed if you could only see him, and your glee would be gargantuan. He's a man who, well, a man. Yes, I've been reborn because of his preaching. He teaches me that I shouldn't love anything. From every earthly passion, he has freed my life. I'd watch my brother, mother, children, and wife drop dead without caring so much as that. If you'd seen him as I did at first, your eyes would have feasted on him with a spiritual thirst. Each day, he came to church smiling with sweet peace and threw himself down before me on both knees. He drew upon himself the eyes of everyone there by the holy fervor of his pious prayer. He sighed and wept with a most saintly passion and humbly kissed the earth in a fetching fashion. And when I was going, he rushed out front to bless me with water from the holy font. Then God bade me take him into my home. And now life is sweet as a honeycomb. He governs us all, and to protect my honor, bids my wife grant his godly rule upon her. He warns me of men who might give her the eye. He really seems more jealous than I. You wouldn't believe his fear of hell. He thinks himself damned for the least bagatelle. Such trifles suffice to scandalize him that he even accuses himself of sin for having slain, with a bit too much wrath, a flea that just happened across his path.
Now, I think anybody with a brain in their head would recognize the fact that this is a hypocrite talking. And yet, we fall for it over and over and over again, which is what Moliere again is trying to teach us. this idea of the person praying most fervently in church to draw attention to themselves, the loudmouth saying, I am the one who knows, I am the one who worships best, I am the one who suffers best, nobody suffers more best than me. The one who oversteps propriety to demonstrate their fervor to you is not demonstrating fervor for something else, but merely fervor for themselves. And yet we fall for it, and we accept it, and we believe that we believe something. And there's a very important phrase in that, because I hear it on the news, on the TV, in the newspapers constantly. God bade me. How many times do you hear that? How often have you heard that? God has told me to do this. God has led me to this. God is telling me this. God is, it's extraordinary how much God says to people of the things that they want to believe themselves, and seldom says, no, don't do that. So again, that's not a thing new. We know it in our own societies, but it's been happening for a very, very long time. It is a classic situation of saint worship. He governs us all. We allow the outsider who appears pious or appears wise to govern us. We do it all the time. And also, there's another clue in that the mention of the wife, and we'll come to that in a while, but that this holy saintly man is more concerned about the propriety of the wife's behavior than anything else. And it's a clue to where the weakness lies. But one of the strongest and most frightening, I think, satirical points within that speech, the saint suggests the following. When any saint suggests the following, we should be on our guard. And the quote is, he teaches me that I shouldn't love anything. From every earthly passion he has freed my life. I'd watch my brother, mother, children, and wife drop dead without caring so much as that. That concept is positively Orwellian. That is the kind of philosophy that we find in the book 1984. When faith in Big Brother supersedes faith in one's own family, when we are prepared to watch, I'll put that answer to that up on the website, James. When we allow that concept to exist within our life, we are running an incredibly dangerous path. When faith in Big Brother supersedes faith in one's family, the alarm bells should be clanging, because something is seriously wrong. And yet, so often we do it. We put blind faith in a blind faith in lost the word now, in a theory, in a concept, in a behavior that we are not actually part of and did not create. When we put our blind faith in that and let it supersede the natural bonds of humanity, we're in a dangerous world. And again, Moliere was miles ahead of us. Now, Moliere gives the wisest assessment of the situation to one character, and that is the maid Doreen. We've heard from her earlier. Aside from me, she's actually the funniest character in the play, but she also serves in this sense as the fourth estate, the press, given the freedom to express the truth. It's a classic Greek motif as well, almost acting like the chorus, or the slave who has a freedom to express, or the classic fool in the all-licensed fool, as Shakespeare mentions it in King Lear. So Doreen is the one who sees how the world really works. And she sees it rather than Orgon's very myopic view, which has been colored by Tartuffe. Now, in this, we see we see Doreen's argument against a proposed marriage. Orgon has decided that to draw Tartuffe closer into the family, he is going to marry his daughter off to Tartuffe. We see Doreen's argument against this marriage, but we also see its likely outcome, and there's a great sense of realism in the words of Doreen. Here's Ken and Lisa Ann again.
Shh. Say he has nothing. For that reason, you should revere him the more. He is a holy man and nobly poor. Raises him up to a greater grandeur that he has renounced all wealth by his pure detachment from the merely temporal and his powerful love for the eternal. But my assistants may give him the means to restore his lands and remove his liens. He is a man of repute in the land of his birth, and even as he is, he's a man of worth.
Yes, so he tells us, but his vanity does not sit so well with true piety. A man pleased with a simple sanctity needn't vaunt his name and his dignity, and the humility born of devotion suffers beneath such blatant ambition. What good is his pride? But perhaps I digress. Let's speak of the man, not his nobleness. Can you bestow, without feeling like a rat, a girl like this on a man like that? And shouldn't you think of propriety and foresee the end with anxiety? We know that some girls cannot remain chaste if their husband's tush is not to their taste, and that the best laid plans for an honest life are somewhat easier for the best laid wife, and that many a man with a horned head has driven his wife to another's bed. It is entirely too much to ask that a wife be faithful to a flabby ass. And one who gives a girl to a man she hates is guilty before God for all her mistakes. Consider the perils you expose yourself to.
I love that argument. It is absolutely wonderful. It is also an argument, by the way, that Shakespeare puts forward in several of his plays, including As You Like It, that by sacrificing his daughter to his own vanity, to his own belief that Tartuffe is wonderful, because that's what he's doing. He is confirming his own vain belief in this, if you like, false god by sacrificing his daughter to it. And the sacrifice of a daughter is another thing from ancient Greek as well, because that's what Iphigenia et al. Is all about as well. So this notion, I believe Moliere is carrying through very, very brilliantly. I believe in this man, and to prove my belief in this man, even to myself, I am prepared to sacrifice my daughter. Remember what he said about his family. He could see them all drop dead and wouldn't bat an eyelid because Tartuffe has taught him not to. Now, the fact that Tartuffe is corrupt actually completely goes without question. Moliere makes no pretense to we, the audience. He doesn't make it as a major reveal halfway through the play. We know just from the way he behaves, just from the way he talks, and just from the attitude of others to him, that he is corrupt. And it's very clear early on, and as we talked about with Orgon's speech, that the very obvious object of desire is not the promised daughter, but the very beautiful wife of Orgon. And when you have control of the mind of your victim, as Tartuffe has with Orgon, everything that they possess becomes potentially available to you. Once you have that willing suspension of truth, once you have established in the mind of your victim that you are worthy and justified in everything you seek, you can get away with almost anything. And Tartuffe wants everything, especially from Elmire. And he actually tells her so. In this particular speech, he makes his intentions absolutely clear to the object of his desire. And here is Caitlin I'm going to read Tartuffe, and Caitlin is going to read Elmire. The love that attracts us to what's eternal does not stop our love for the merely temporal. Our senses can be quite easily charmed by the perfect earthly works that God has formed. His glory is mirrored in those like you, but in yourself we see its rarest hue. He has moulded your face with such sublime art that it surprises the eye and transports the heart. And I can't gaze upon you, you perfect creature, without worshipping in you both God and nature, and sensing in my soul an ardent love for this, the most beautiful portrait of by God above. At first I feared that my secret passion might be a tricky trap laid by Satan, but I finally learned, O beauty most lovable, that my ardor for you could never be culpable, that I should even consider it right, and so I submit to my heart's delight. I confess that I am playing an audacious part in presenting to you the gift of my heart. In you I seek peace, hope, and happiness. On you depends my torment or my bliss, and through you alone I will finally be happy, if you will, or sad, if you please. But his inappropriate intentions are discovered by Orgon's son, the famous Damis, who, of course, reveals all to his father, because it is the young who know the truth, who see the absurdity. And needless to say, in a very perfect, and I mentioned it last week, I mentioned Jimmy Swaggart, the preacher who was caught out. In a perfect equal moment, Tartuffe confesses all. It's a wonderful reversal. He wrings his hands in abject self-abasement. It is quite a brilliant moment. And it is a brilliant moment because it is true of its time and for all time. The hypocrite will always find a way out. And very often, the way out is to confess. When found out, when confronted with his adoration and desire for Elmire, Tartuffe responds, "Yes, brother, I'm wicked and culpable, a sorry sinner, full of iniquity, as great a wretch as there ever could be. My entire life has been soiled with evil. It's nothing but a mass of sinful upheaval, and I see that God has, for my punishment, chosen to mortify me with this event. Let them connect any crime with my name. I'll waive all defense and take all the blame. Believe what they tell you. Stoke up your wrath and drive me like a felon from your path. The shame that I bear cannot be too great, for I know I deserve a much worse fate." There's nothing like a good confession, is there, to make you believe that the man is contrite. So desperate times need desperate measures. Orgon believes Tartuffe. He does not believe Damis. And it's the fact that Tartuffe is willing to confess to any crime that convinces Orgon that Tartuffe is confessing to a sin that he did not commit. It's just because he's so holy. We believe the hypocrite because we want to believe the hypocrite, and we want to believe them because if we don't, we are confirming our own mistake. That's a dangerous situation to be in. So, as I say, desperate times need desperate measures. In order to get Orgon to see the truth, Elmire, the wife, must put herself at risk. Now, this is an example of true heroism. And again, it is paralleled in the way society works. This is what we do. This is the action of a resistance movement against a hated invader. Elmire puts her very body on the line. And just as the resistance fighter goes out and risks their life, put their body on the line, Elmire, in this sense, because it is a parody, because it is a satire, puts her body on the line in an attempt to tempt the sexually vulnerable Tartuffe. And in a way that Orgon can't miss. She sets up a meeting with Tartuffe, and she hides her husband underneath the table upon which the assault could take place. Here we have Elmire explaining to her husband,
Mind you, I'm going to have strange things to say, and you must not be shocked in any way. Whatever I say, you must allow. I only mean to convince you anyhow. I'm going to use sex, since I'm reduced to it, to strip off the cloak of this hypocrite, to stoke up the fires of his insolent heart and give him free field to this base upstart. For your sake, and to deepen his disrepute, I'm going to pretend to welcome his suit. I'll quit just as soon as you've heard enough. Things needn't go farther than you wish, my love. And you must stop them from becoming so bizarre when you think his mad love has gone too far. Spare your wife and don't leave me in his hands longer than reaching your conviction demands. This is your concern and you are in command. Here he comes. Keep still. Keep down. Understand?
It's rather wonderful that, because again, Moliere is setting up a wonderful proposition. Stop me when you've heard enough. She's putting the responsibility onto Orgon to stop what could become rape. But it wouldn't be rape because she's willingly offering herself to Tartuffe as she's making herself a victim. This is the resistance putting itself out on the line. She is offering her body as a means to expose the corruption of the oppressor. It's a parallel throughout society and throughout the ages. And Tartuffe falls for this, what we might describe as guerrilla action. And he falls for it hook, line, and sinker. He questions it for a while because it seems to be too good to be true. And the offer of what you desire suddenly being made is always a little bit too good to be true. We always question it, no matter how corrupt we may be. But sooner or later, our weakness will always become vulnerable. And lust is always a weakness, regardless of what is lusted for. Because in terms of the oppressor, in terms of this play, in terms of this satire, the lust clearly is sexual. But the lust for power and for the powerful and for those who gain power by deceit and hypocrisy can be lust for money, lust for position, lust for rank, lust for property, lust for a nation, lust for whatever the other person has that you don't have. But once that offer is made, no matter how clever you may be about it, sooner or later, you become vulnerable to your own lust. And that's the point of this sequence with Tartuffe and Elmire. So Tartuffe arrives in the room, just as Elmire mentioned in the previous moment. You wish to speak with me in here, I'm told, Elmire.
Yes.
And
I now have some secrets to unfold, but shut the door before I say a word and look around. We mustn't be overheard. I don't want another fracas to ensue like the one that overtook us hitherto. Never before had I been so dismayed. Dami startled me and made me afraid for you. You must have seen that I did my best to disrupt his plan and soothe his unrest. But by the grace of God, I'm nearly sure all is for the best, and now we're more secure. The prestige of your name has dispelled the storm, and my husband will never suspect you of harm. Defying those rumors to ferment, he wants us together at every moment, and that is why, without blame, I can be alone with you, although you're a man, and that allows me to open my heart willingly to the sweet thoughts you impart.
I find it odd that you should have kind words to say. Earlier, you treated me in a different way.
If you're angry about that rebuff, you know nothing of a woman's love, and how little you know about our intent if you think a weak defense is really meant. At such times, our modesty must contend with the tender feelings that triumph in the end. No matter how strongly you make love's claim, in embracing it, we always feel some shame. We resist it at first, but in our faces, it's clear we'll soon yield to your embraces. Our words and our wishes are often opposed. A refusal may mean we'll accept what's proposed.
And he is basically hooked. Vanity, thy name is man. And very often, as Shakespeare also put it, proud man dressed in a little brief authority. The parallel between Tartuffe in this moment and Angelo in Measure for Measure is quite considerable. But Elmire goes on. She's quite brilliant in the way she plays this game.
No doubt I am making too free a confession, and I may be committing an indiscretion.
There is no pleasure in heaven above, sweeter than such words from the lips I love. Their honeyed sound flows richly through my senses with the sweetness of the purest essences. The pleasure of pleasing you is my one goal, and my heart finds happiness in that role. But that heart also takes the slight liberty of daring to doubt this felicity. And if I may speak quite freely with you, I won't believe that all you say is true until I am assured that you couldn't lie by a few of those favors for which I sigh. Such favors would make me your devotee and true believer in your fondness for me.
Do you demand you push on with such great speed and drain my heart with your burning need? I risked my life in proclaiming my love, and for you even that is not enough. Can't you be satisfied with what I say? Must you force me to going all the way?
The less one merits, the more one desires. Mere words will never quench our raging fires. A promised gift is often suspected. We rarely believe in it until we inspect it.
Oh, good God, your love is too oppressive. It troubles my soul and becomes obsessive. What, is there no way to stave off your desire? Won't you give me a moment to respire?
If you look on me with kindly heart, then prove how you feel by playing your part.
But how can I give you the things you seek without offending that God of whom you speak?
If it's only God that opposes my desire, I'll think up a way to make him conspire, and that need not restrain your heart, my dear.
But the decrees of God scare me to tears.
Though God forbids certain gratifications, with him one can reach certain accommodations. It is a science to stretch out the strings of conscience in the service of diverse things, and to rectify an evil action with the purity of our intention. Satisfy my desires and have no fear. I'll assume the sin and leave your soul clear.
And in spite of myself to stoop down to it, but since you persist in making me obey, since you refuse to believe what I say, and since you demand more convincing proof, I'll have to give in and quit acting aloof. If this action causes anyone grief, the blame be on him who refused all relief. The fault most certainly is none of mine.
Yes, madam, I agree, and that is fine.
Peek out the door and see, I beg you, if my spouse is spying on our rendezvous.
Why, do you care if he sees, or where he goes? He's a man who loves to be led by the nose. Our trysts are something he's proud of achieving, and he'd watch us go to it without believing.
No matter, please go have a look outside. I'd hate to think he's found a place to hide.
Now, the cleverness of this scene also is, in a term, a parody and a satire on the fact that when we hear the truth, Orgon under the table is listening to the truth and still takes ages before he reacts. It's funny because we see Elmire's situation that at any moment Tartuffe could quite literally leap upon her and take her virtue away. And Orgon is doing nothing. He's listening, he hears it all, but he still won't react, and she's in a state of panic. But there's another important point in that scene, the vanity of proclaiming God's word, especially when you claim to be able to authorize in his name. And Tartuffe, in that sequence, has this, what I would consider a wonderful moment of hypocrisy by saying, yes, I know it's God's law, but I can do a deal with God. God will listen to me. I will pray upon it, and I'll take all the blame, and you'll be free of it. That is something that we often hear. We often hear in society, we often hear in religion, we often hear in politics. It's okay to do this. I've got a deal going. It'll be fine. It is the ultimate hypocrisy of religion, wherever it occurs. But finally, Orgon realizes the truth and his own stupidity. And when a person realizes finally that he was wrong, seldom does that person go, mea culpa, I am stupid. Very often the righteous anger breaks forth at last, and you will hear the roar of the mouse, putting the blame firmly where it belongs on the other person. Elmire, while that happened, when Orgon comes out, is rather annoyed with her husband. Anyway, we'll hear that in this brief exchange between Orgon and Elmire.
There, I swear, is an abominable man. I can't get over it. What is his plan?
How now? Come out so soon? Were you having fun? Get back down there. We've only just begun. Wait till the end to be completely sure, and don't put your faith in mere conjecture.
No man more evil has been spawned in hell.
Oh, dear Lord, don't believe the lies that people tell. Be wholly convinced before you concede. Cautious men shun the slips that come with speed.
And again, the satire is strong here, because when you are given the evidence before your very eyes that this is corruption, still you're saying, God damn him to hell, it's absolutely dreadful. But you're not taking any action. You're not going out and shooting him. You're not going out and complaining to the officers of the law. You're just standing there going, hump, 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 hump. Elmire is quite right and say, oh, would you like more proof? Can I go further? Would you like him to actually rape me in front of you? Would that be fine? Don't make any decisions yet. Just stand there, harumphing. Beautiful piece of satire. But we must also remember that our oppressors are very good at what they do. Otherwise, they wouldn't be oppressors. And they prepare for all eventualities. One of the great rules of war is always have a well-planned exit strategy. And of course, Tartuffe, being very clever, has exactly that. Tartuffe, as we described when we talked about the plot last week, Tartuffe is in possession of certain secret letters that Orgon gave to him in trust. Orgon has already written a will granting all his property to Tartuffe. So when Orgon tries to throw Tartuffe out, a bailiff arrives with some very bad news. You can seem to defeat an enemy, but watch out for the sting in the tail. Because there arrives this bailiff. My name is Loyal. I come from Normandy. I'm the bailiff here in spite of envy for the last 40 years. Thank be to God, I've done my duty and retained my job. And I've come to you with your permission to serve this notice of your eviction. It's nothing more than a notification in order to evict both you and yours, put your furniture out and lock your doors without pardon or delay. This house now belongs, I have ample proof, to your very good friend, Monsieur Tartuffe. He's the master and lord of all your wealth by virtue of a deed he showed me himself. I'm giving you time, and until morning I'll hold in abeyance the execution of this conveyance. I shall only come here with 10 of my boys to spend the night without scandal or noise. For the sake of form, please bring to me before you go to bed the keys of your door. I'll take care not to disturb your repose and not do anything you would oppose. But tomorrow morning, you must get set to empty the house down to the last brochette. My boys will assist you. Each one's a strong lout and will do all they can do to help you move out. I'm doing my best to use common sense, and since I'm treating you with such indulgence, I beg you, sir, to act in the same way to me and let no one bar me from doing my duty. Yeah, I love that again, because when the final blow is struck, it's very often struck with that wonderfully sardonic, polite tone. The creation of Monsieur Loyal, and he's much longer in the play, the creation of Monsieur Loyal is that final insult, to be thrown out with dignity, to be told with dignity that everything you have is gone, that you have not only lost the game, but you have lost everything through your own stupidity. The vanity of Tartuffe led him to exposure for his lust. The vanity of Orgon has destroyed everything he had. And where he said at the beginning he wouldn't turn a hair if his family were destroyed, they are now, and every hair on his head is turning. But this is a comedy. And a comedy must have a happy ending. And so it does. One of the rules of comedy, one of the great rules from the Greeks, is that there must always be a character of resolution, somebody who brings it together at the end and makes it all right. And as I mentioned in last week's webinar, that character in this play does exactly that. Being Moliere, the happy ending has to be a satire, and it has to be a satire on the power of the one person in society with absolute authority, the one person who can bend and change the law as a personal whim. In this case, justice is done almost, if you like, by a friendly Tartuffe, by somebody who will bend and break the rules for his own purposes and his own delight. And that, of course, is the king. And the king's officer arrives to save the day. And he does it by tying up every loose end so perfectly and so comfortably that there's this wonderful sense of almost like a soft down mattress lies beneath everybody that they can sink into and say, it's all happy ever after. A police officer arrives and he arrests Tartuffe, says to him, I've been rather slow to issue it, the warrant that Tartuffe expects to be for Orgon. Your own mouth aptly invites me to do it, and so it will be done if you will come straight to the jail that will be your new home. And Tartuffe is aghast. How could this have happened? Because the good fairy, because the magic wizard, because another, if you like, hypocrite, the king, has changed the rules. And the officer goes on to explain it to Orgon. Calm yourself, sir. After passions of such heat, we're ruled by a prince who's a foe to deceit, a prince whose eyes can read what the soul has writ, and who can't be fooled by a hypocrite. Important point. The prince is above that, the king, in this sense. Can't be ruled by a hypocrite. You can, but the king knows more. Blessed with such fine discernment, his great heart always sees the whole picture, not just the part. Nothing can drive him to exaggeration. His firm reason clings to moderation. He confers on men of worth immortal glory, but that zeal is not blind or peremptory, and his love for what's true does not turn his eye from the power of falseness to horrify. In other words, that Moliere is saying, we worshipped Tartuffe as a false god. We are now being controlled by a true god. That true God is ruling by whim. This man here was unable to entrap him. His defenses are sound when such snares enwrap him. From the start, he, the king, pierced with his perceptive sight through the veils that hid this evil from light. Tartuffe betrayed himself by accusing you, and in divine justice revealed his true nature. In short, the king was revolted to see his ingratitude to you and disloyalty to his other crimes. He has joined this one and has only allowed it so everyone could see his audacity and evil ends and then see him required to make amends. In other words, the king has driven it to the very extreme of possibilities and then stepped in the last moment like the superhero he is. This is Superman or Batman descending in and putting it all right. And then he goes on. All the papers which the wretch has poured through are here taken away and returned to you. And with his sovereign power, he will abrogate the contract by which you gave away your estate. He basically will put everything back the way it was. And finally, he pardons that secret offense which you once committed through benevolence. In other words, he says, he pardons you for basically being disloyal to him. It is the reward for the courage you showed in support of his rights in the late episode, and to demonstrate that, when least expected, one's past deeds may be recollected, that he will never forget a good deed, and that good outweighs evil in time of need. Good will always win over bad is a fantasy and a fiction established by this other demigod that we all worship and must worship, the king, the ultimate authority. Moliere, to my mind, and as I say, everything I tell you may be wrong, but to my mind, Moliere is saying, be careful who you pray with. Be careful of the Tartuffes of this world. But the Tartuffes may not just be the clearly corrupt and evil creatures that they are, but even those that we have granted authority to and who have taken authority over us. Always beware of everyone, because at the end of the play, where the moral occurs, that good will always triumph over evil, it's done by someone who yet again is changing the rules for his own benefit, for his own self-glory. The king, in this case, changes the rules, forgives treason, punishes someone who has gained a perfectly legal document. The king has said, no, it's not legal anymore, I've decided. No appeal court, no Supreme Court, nothing like that. No, king has the absolute authority. He is another demigod in this sense. So I suppose, in a way, what I'm saying about this play and why I think this play is glorious. I think it's one of the greatest comedies ever written, because it is also one of the greatest political satires ever written. And as I said last week, the ones who oppose it, the king was quite amused by it. Louis quite liked it, and a lot of the aristocracy quite liked it because it was funny. The church got it banned. Why did the church get it banned? Why would they go to that extent of banning a play? Why would any organization that had faith in itself and the truth of its motives ever go about banning a play, or banning books, or burning books? Like I say at the beginning, be careful who you pray with, and be careful what you worship. And that's my point on Tartuffe. So I'm preparing for the next round of webinars, and I'll have more information about that. It'll be on the website, it'll be on Facebook, it'll be on YouTube. I'll announce that after the weekend. But in the meantime, thank you again to everybody. Thank you again to the Allegheny Foundation. Thank you to my wonderful readers for being there. But most of all, thank you to you for tuning in yet again of a Friday, or whatever time of day or of week it is that you look at us on YouTube. In the meantime, please, please, please consider making a donation. Every dollar counts. I keep pointing this out. It is your dollars that actually put the plays on the stage. And if you can make any donation, no matter how small, preferably no matter how large, but no matter how small, it really does make a huge difference to our ability to bring you the best of theater in Pittsburgh, to bring you the webinars, to bring you our whole education program. Please consider making a donation. Go to the website, click on the button. It's the easiest thing in the world. Apart from that, that's it. I will see you all again next Friday. Bye for now.